Finally, we have reached to the Shab-e Ashur, the night of the Ashur. Tonight is the 9th Muharram, and we are commemorating the greatest tragedy mankind has ever experienced or ever will experience in their lifetime. People compare the war of Karbala with the worldly war which are still going on with us, in front of us. The war in Ukraine is going on, the war in Gaza is going on. Perhaps that's their Karbala, the way the water has been restricted to the children of Gaza, the way they have been trapped, the way Imam Hussein has been trapped in Karbala. Comparable, if you think about it. But these wars will be forgotten with due time. In the course of history, we have experienced the First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War, the Afghanistan War, Iran-Iraq War, all the worldly war, as I said. This was not comparable, the struggle of Imam Hussein and the wars of Karbala, which is, I always say that, the shortest war in the history of any war took place, but longest remembered war in the history of mankind. If you think about it, that we are still remembering Imam Hussein and shedding tears and paying attention to the details of the war. How is it started? Why is it started? And in order to understand, because sometimes it's confusing if you don't pay attention to the details of this war. If you don't pay attention to the prior to this war, it is not an isolation that 10th of Muharram arrived all of a sudden in the month of Muharram and an incident took place like this. No, you got to go back to the history of Islam. History of Islam is so vast that historians have written, so much is written about Islam and the history of Islam, and particularly on Imam Hussein and Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, that still people are questioning. And still people are not accepting the fact that this is the gruesome tragedy the mankind ever suffered. So why is that? Because underneath, if this war is nothing but the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No other wars have had message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those were territorial wars. Those were power wars. And if you compare it even today, Ukrainian war is the war about territory. Putin wants Ukraine because that's his claimed territory. Here there is no territorial war. It was a war of haq and batil. It was a war of sanctity of Islam, protecting Islam from the wrong hands who were bent upon to destroy the message of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And therefore, the gravity of this war is so powerful, so big, that it will reverberate until the Yawm al-Qiyamah. You know, Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayhi, when she was being in the prison of Yazid after the martyrdom of Imam Hussein, were crying one night, and historians have written, and I've read the authenticity of this hadith. They say that she was sleeping, and in her sleep, well, before sleeping, she was thinking about it, that who will cry for my Hussein? Who will remember that we lost everything on these plains of Karbala? Look at us. We are the most unfortunate people here in the prison of Yazid. Our children have passed away. Our children have been slain. I think it was the night when Bibi Sakina was being passed away in the prison of Yazid. So she was most depressed that night and was crying. And in that cry, she fell asleep. And in her sleep, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Don't cry, my grandchild. I will create a nation. I will create the followers of Ahl al-Bayt who will cry until Yawm al-Qiyamah for your brother Hussein and all the Shuhada of Karbala. How true it was. How prophecy was true of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That throughout the world today, the people are paying homage and crying for Imam Hussein. As it happened yesterday. No, it happened 1,400 years ago. However, we feel in our hearts and hearts that Karbala took place just now. We relive Karbala. We reimagine Karbala. We resurrect Karbala. The term resurrection has been used by Catholics about Christianity when they talk about the Christ who is risen after 3 days. We resurrect Karbala every first month of Islamic calendar. Look at the system. Whole year, 11 months passed, 12 months finished, the Hajj finished. People have completed Hajj and then they return back to commemorate Imam Hussein. And this is the miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If nothing else, what else you would call it if not miracle? And the other miracle happened was the continuation of the Imamah. Everything was finished except Zain al-Abidin. Imam Sajjad was the only lone Imam, and Imam Hussein finally, when leaving his camp to the battlefield, returned back to the camps and hands over the Imam. He said, after me, it's you who will be carrying the can. You will be the Imam of Waqf. You will be responsible for the future of Ummah. What a great responsibility given to a person who is not able to even fight, who was not able to look after himself at that time. He was sick, he was suffering from fever. Imagine an individual receiving that huge responsibility on his shoulder by his father, saying that after me, it's you who will be carrying the banner of Islam. And how beautifully he carried that banner of Islam for 35 years after returning back to Medina. Even the conditions were not right. He endured and suffered the hardship of the prison of Yazid. The walk from Karbala to Kufa to Sham in chains and with difficulties with the caravan of children and ladies, he continued his responsibility. And he spent almost a year in the prison of Yazid and then returned back via Karbala to bury the Shuhada whose head has been severed off on the day of Ashura. We will recite Maqtal tomorrow and we will cry. Wallahi, we will cry. Because when you hear the Maqtal, when Shaykh recites the Maqtal, you know, you feel pain in your heart from the zulm, from the kind of cruelty they have used on the Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salam. Little they knew who these people were. Very well they knew who these people were. Yet they were allured by the dunya, the wealth, and the reward of the Yazid. So they did not spare even the 6-month-old baby. They did not spare Qasim. They did not spare Ali Akbar, Aun Muhammad, Abbas, Muslim ibn Awsaja, Zuhair ibn Qayn, Habib ibn Mazahir. All of those companions, Wahab Kalbi, Wahab Kalbi, a Christian who just converted to Islam, a newly wedded couple, 2 days before the day of Ashura. You know, all of these people sacrificed for Imam Hussein. And they knew who these people were.
They pretended that they don't know. They said, we don't know nothing about you. All we have been doing is following the orders of our Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. How stupid, how cruel they can be. And this is the mankind's lesson that we learn tonight on the day of Ashura.